Hey up there, we're back with our Yamaha Norton Special, or Norton Yamaha, or whatever you want to call it. So all I've done while you were away is I repaired these two little pieces. You may remember they had, for some reason, pieces cut out. I guess somebody else was going to use this for a special. But anyway, I've put them back in. I've also taken off the Norton front engine mountings. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get the swinging arm in and we're going to do the engine mountings. So let me get the motor and then I'll tell you what we're going to do there. So there we have it sitting in the frame. I've put the top half of the case on so I can see a little bit better what's happening. Now, as I mentioned, we have two engine mounters. We have one long one that goes right through there, and then here at the front we have a short one either side. So we've got to sit this in the frame, obviously exactly crosswise so that it's at right angles to things like the chain line. So I had to think of a way to set that in there without sort of jigging it all up. Now you may remember when we were doing the trials bike, I talked about when you're doing specials, it's always nice if you can find sort of some fixed datum point to measure from. Something that the factory made that you know is going to be good. So we have that here. This is the mounting for the plates that carried the gearbox and the swinging arm. So these obviously have got to be right in the planes that we want to be working in. So my first thought was I would get something like this, put it across there, and then maybe just make a couple of pieces that would go and bolt to there. And then as long as we kept, obviously that's exactly across the engine, as long as we kept that the same distance from here and from here, everything was right. So that was the way my mind was working, when it does work. So I thought, okay, that's what I'll do. So then I came to thinking about putting the swinging arm in. Now, I'm going to put the swinging arm in the way it was in the original Norton. In other words, not on a fixed mounting on the frame. In other words, it wouldn't be sort of through that hole there. But actually, as it is mounted on these gearbox plates. See, even the last iteration of the Commando had a separate gearbox. So what I need to do is cut these off so that they'll fit around the back of the engine. So I would make a cardboard template for that. But then I suddenly thought to myself, wait a minute, if I want to make this so it's detachable, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'm still not completely sold on our chain conversion. So it's a very slight possibility, but I might do it with a shaft. Don't want to because it would spoil the look that I'm after. But if need be, I thought I don't want to have lots of things welded in here. So what I was going to do was, as I say, cut this and at the bottom bolt it onto a bracket on the frame. So then if we decide not to use this, we can just take it off and make whatever brackets we need to hold another swinging arm. And then I suddenly thought to myself, wait a minute, if this point, i.e. this one, is fixed, then so or anywhere on these plates that I measure off and do exactly the same on both sides. So I thought to myself, right, what I'll do is the mounting I make here, I'll actually make it big enough to encompass the engine mounting. So now what I can do is we'll make our cardboard template, so this will go in. Then we'll make a plate that will mount to this and to the engine. So when I've got this done so that it's in the right place, as I say, I know it's going to be exactly the same on both sides. Then if I just make two identical mounting plates, then when they're bolted into the swinging arm plate, provided I make them identical, then the mounting for the engine is going to be in exactly the same place. Everything's going to be square and really nice. Then obviously once I've got this in, making the front ones is going to be relatively easy. So the first thing we've got to do is make a cardboard template to show us where we're going to cut out the gearbox plates. And if any of you are crying about cutting the plates up, there's lots of commandos about, there's lots of commandos being scrapped, there's lots of engine plates, and apart from anything else, it's a plate. So I'm not overly worried about it. I mean, I've cut chunks off this frame, so might as well cut the rest off the swinging arm, and that's one Norton Commando that's scrap if nothing happens, so nothing's lost. So let's get some cardboard and make a template for this. Now I'll set the engine on a little bit of wood just to get it so that it's not actually sitting on the frame, and lined it up best I can. Now then, what I've made is just a very rough template because the back half of it is already to shape, so I just need to know how much space I need round here. Okay. Now then, while you were gone and I was doing this, I came across a couple of things which were slightly worrying, but I think we're all right. First thing was, this side is nice and easy to get at. I discovered the other side, the casing comes a lot closer to this, and for a moment there I thought I wasn't going to be able to put another mounting back here for this plate, but there is just enough space, so we're all right there, because the bolt can go through from this side and this side, because we'll use a long bolt, so we just need to put nuts on, so that's fine. But the other thing, something which I hadn't noticed, was when I laid the template onto this, of course what I'd forgotten was the two plates aren't cut out exactly the same. This one's got a bigger hole, so I had actually been looking at everything from this side, and I seem to have lots, but of course the other one is cut right back in. But not to worry, it's all going to work. But what I did find, another spot of good luck, remember me wanting to drill a hole with this as sort of the datum? Well, this hole here just squeaks in. I might have to do a little bit of something to the frame tube, maybe just take a little scallop out, but those holes, one in each plate, are already there, so I know I'm all set up. So what I'm going to do now is get this here template out, and I'm just going to cut the plates roughly to fit. So we need to have that on there, that so it's there, and basically what I'm going to do is just cut it there and across there to get myself so that I can put it in. Then we can start making it look pretty and curving corners and things like that. But basically if I just cut in between those two holes up here and about at the edge of the slot where the primary chain tensioning bolt used to be, we should be able to fit it in and then work out exactly where everything goes. So I'm going to cut this using a grinder, I think, with a cutting wheel in. So let me go off and do that, make lots of sparks, and when we come back I'll be able to put this in and we should be able to see what's happening. Now we've come across our first problem. I'll put the swinging arm in and cut the plates. I have a little bit more to just ease it round. But with this hole in the plate going to be here, as I was originally planning, the sprocket line to this pivot point to the back wheel, this was right up here. Now we're only going to be able to get a small sprocket on here, and because of that we're going to need a small sprocket on the back, so we're not going to have a huge amount of angle in the chain. It's going to be very much more like that. So I wanted to get the line a bit closer, this slightly up above, so that when the swinging arm goes up, the chain will go up with it and everything will be alright. So I thought, okay, so I swung this down, I cut a little bit more, I swung it out, and then I thought to myself, okay, that's perfect. Now I can mount the plate under here. It was close, I thought I might have to scallop a little bit out. But then I found that, of course, I didn't have the sump on, and this plate was now sticking right under where the sump might be. And then I got thinking, I said, wait a minute, I don't have the sump on. Is the sump going to go down in between these bottom frame tubes? So I'm going to go and put the sump on and the little round cover for the oil filter, and we'll put it back in and see how it sits then. Now I've put the sump on and I've put the oil filter cover on, and it fits in. So you'd think that's very nice, but the sump isn't centered on the bottom of the engine. So although the sump is narrower than the frame tubes, it's slightly over to one side and it's slightly over to this side. So everything fits in nicely. Here's our front engine mounting, there's our rear engine mounting. I've got to do the plate a little bit to get this in. Chain line is still nice in terms of the angle it's going to be at. But is the engine centered in the frame? So what I've done is made a few measurements. I'm going to lift the camera up so you can see, and I'll show you the results. Now, I've set the engine so that it's exactly square in the frame by measuring from a stud to the swinging arm plates. So I know the engine's square. Then I've got the exact centre point of the motor there, and I've got the exact centre point of the frame here, again by measuring. Now then, am I living a good life or what? Excuse my hat. Can you see that? We're absolutely spot on this line and going through this line. I don't believe it. I do even have a little bit I can shave off, and I could always take a tiny little piece out of the tube on this side, just, or even squeeze it slightly. But it'll go in, and it'll go in straight. So there you go. So next thing for me to do is to cut the rear plates right. So let me take you back down there. Now here you can see the engine mounting. Here's the plate, and there you can see the hole I was hoping to use, because that was an original hole, so I knew it was going to be in exactly the right place. But what I'm going to do is cut this plate off just down there and drill a hole in here so that we can have a nice engine plate like that, and it'll bolt to that plate, and it'll bolt to that. Now when I drill this engine plate, of course, I'm going to have to drill a hole exactly in the same place on both sides. Now if you've got a milling machine, that's not a big problem, because we can put it in and just drill through. But I'm going to do it as if I didn't have a milling machine. And what I'm going to do is just mark where I want the hole on one side, then I'm going to drill a hole there. Then I actually need a piece to go through from one plate to the other to strengthen it. So I'm going to get a piece of, you could use a piece of tube, but I'm going to take a piece of solid round and drill through it exactly the right size to fit in there. Then I'll clamp it in, and it will act as a drill guide from this hole through the centre of that tube and come out the other side. Everything will be right. So let's get on and do that. Now I'm going to cut the plate first, both sides, then put it in so I can mark it. So I'm just going to tidy up the top end a little bit and then cut this piece out the bottom. And when I cut this plate before, as I mentioned, I used the grinder with the cutting wheel in. And it took me so long that I had a little rush of blood, and I bought myself a plasma cutter. So put your goggles and your face shields on, and let's see if I can use this thing. or more. Right, let's try the next bit. Well, that's a damn sight better than a hacksaw, isn't it? Clean as to cuts, because it's only the second time I've used it. Got a little bit of grinder and we're done there. So let me do the other side and then I put it back on and mark where we're going to do it. Now then, since you were last here, I've been doing some thinking. A rare point, and I decided that I didn't like to have the engine centre line being exactly on the frame centre line when I was up against the tube. I needed a little bit of wiggle room. So what I've done is I've taken a piece out of the tube here and put some flat in. Now this, of course, was particularly annoying because you may remember I said when I found this frame in amongst the scrap, two pieces had been cut out, and I had found one piece, which was the piece that went on the other side. The piece that had been cut out of here was missing, so I actually made a piece and welded it in, and now I've had to take it back out. So anyway, that gives me about 1/4 of an inch or so of space to play with. So I feel a bit happy about that. So back to swinging arm and engine mounting plates. Alright. Make sure you're still in view. Yes. Now then, what I've done is I've cut these plates now so they all fit properly, and I've drilled a hole, 1/2 inch hole in one side. There it is. I've also made up my spacing piece to go in here, because as I say, I want to strengthen this. There's already one piece there, one piece there, so this nicely makes the whole thing more rigid. So this is a nice tight fit in there. So what I'm going to do is stick a piece of 1/2 inch in, which is the size of the bolt we're going to use, and then I'll clamp that nice and tight, make sure it's good and straight, and I'm going to tack this in place. So let me weld that in there, and then we can put this whole thing back in the frame with the engine, and we can start to look at making engine plates. What I'm also going to have to do is make up 2 distance pieces for each side, because this is only, where are we, 3 3/4 inches wide, and the engine mounting on the bottom of the engine is 8 1/4. So I'm going to have 2 pieces on either side. They're not, I've just been measuring it, they're not equidistant from the centre, so I'm going to have to make 2 slightly different size ones, but I've done that measuring, and these I'm just going to make out of aluminium. They can be loose fittings, doesn't matter, so I might as well save a little bit of weight there. So we'll do that, and then we can start making up the plates for the rear. Of course, as expected, 1/2 inch drill is too short, 1/2 inch drill is too long to be able to get in. So I'm going to have to drill this 7/16 and then just finish it off with a hand drill. put this thing in gear. And there we have that hole drilled, so let me put it in the vise and just finish it off with the longer drill. Now here's everything in place. I've set the engine up, and here's the bolt that's going to go through the bottom of the swinging arm mounting plate. And I don't have another bolt at the moment, so this piece of 1/2 inch tube, that's going to be the engine mounting. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a plate which encompasses the two of those. And if I make two identical plates, one for each side, and I have the holes exactly identical as well, then I can make my spacer up, because there's going to be spacers on either side, as I say, bolt it all together, and then just tack the plates in, and everything will be set up exactly right to the axis of the bike. So the next thing to do is to make a cardboard template, probably from up here, come down like that onto there, and that'll be it. So let me get on and do some cardboard cutting. Now I've put a couple of just 1/2 inch threaded rods in. I'm going to get some bolts. I might see if I can get some stainless steel ones. So the first thing to do was, as I say, to make up a cardboard template which would catch both bolt holes and fit into the frame. Now the important thing here was the relationship of these two bolts. Then the next thing was to cut a template. Now I actually, as you can see, I changed the shape of the top a little, but the important thing again is these two holes and their relationship to the curve of it going into the frame. Now I made two templates the same, but the one for the other side had to be shaped because the engine's not as open on that side. But again, the important thing was, if I turn it round the right way, that I have the two holes and the shape of the frame correct. So when I got them, I was able to measure. Now this one on this side, the mounting cast into the engine is over the frame, so I was able to, here I can just put this plate straight on. So what I did was measured from here to the plate, which was 2 1/4 inches, and actually it was the same on both sides, which was good because that's where it's supposed to be. Then this goes on here, reach across, get the bolt stick through. Of course the engine's moved about a little bit, there we go. So that goes in there, and that one goes in there like so. Now as I mentioned, this mounting here isn't actually equidistant from the centre line. So for the other side I've made one of those to go on that bolt, and then one of these to go on there, and that gets us exactly correct. Then this plate will go on. Well, this plate says, look, well, at least it shows the frame is right. If it'll go on this side, then obviously it'll go on the other side. See, this is stage fright. You may have noticed I'm very shy. Alright, so that goes in there like that. This one is going to go on the other side with its spacers. So what I'm going to do is put that one on the other side, put some nuts on here and tighten it all up, and then we can tack and maybe put a little bit of weld in both sides. Then this has got this engine mounting just right. Now once that's in, as I say, because everything is relative to itself or to each other, the engine is now in exactly square to the swinging arm. So we're going to be perfect for chain line. And speaking of chain line, let me, excuse me. There's our chain, and you can see on the mounting here, when the chain's on, this will come up a little bit, so we're going to be really nice for chain line. Everything has worked out well. So there's the left hand engine plate welded in, the right hand one is in as well. So now all I've got to do is put the motor back in, make sure everything lined up. As I did it, I tacked both sides of each plate in several places before I ran the full bead down, so they should be okay. I've popped the bolts through, they line up alright. So let me put the engine in and I'll come back to you.